Thanksgiving was always my favorite holiday. I spent years making sure everyone felt welcome at my table. Family, friends, even the occasional neighbor who had nowhere else to go. But this year, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew crisp, I received a message that shattered my heart. Mom, we think it's best if you skip Thanksgiving this year. It'll just be immediate family. I stood in the grand kitchen of my Vermont estate, the scent of cinnamon and roasting turkey filling the air, and realized I'd been erased from my own family's table. But what my children didn't know was that I had a surprise planned, one that would turn my loneliness into the most unforgettable Thanksgiving feast this town had ever seen. Before I share what happened next, please subscribe to my channel and join our community of strong voices. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of standing up for yourself, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? And what does Thanksgiving mean to you? Your support helps me share more stories like this. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 70 years old. For as long as I can remember, Thanksgiving was the day my house overflowed with laughter, the smell of roasting turkey, and the warmth of family. I was the glue that held everyone together, the one who remembered everyone's favorite pie, who set the table with the good china, who made sure there was always room for one more. I wasn't always wealthy. I grew up in a small town, worked hard, and built a business from scratch with my late husband, Charles. When he passed, I poured my heart into our children, my son, Michael, and my daughter, Grace, and into the home we dreamed of, a sprawling estate nestled in the Vermont hills, with fireplaces in every room and windows that looked out over acres of golden trees. Every year, I hosted Thanksgiving for the whole family. I spared no expense. Caterers, musicians, even horse-drawn carriage rides for the grandkids. I wanted my home to be a place of joy, a place where memories were made. But this year, something felt different. The calls from Michael and Grace grew shorter, the visits less frequent. Grace always had an excuse: work, the kids' activities, a last-minute trip. Michael's wife, Julia, started making little comments about doing things differently or keeping it simple this year. I tried to ignore the signs, telling myself I was overthinking, that families go through phases. Then, a week before Thanksgiving, I got the text. Mom, we think it's best if you skip Thanksgiving this year. It'll just be immediate family. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. Immediate family? Wasn't I immediate family? I was the mother, the grandmother, the one who started this tradition. I felt the world tilt beneath me, the kitchen suddenly colder, the pie crust I'd been rolling out forgotten on the counter. I called Grace, hoping for an explanation. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice tight. Hi, Mom. Grace, I got your message. Is something wrong? Did I do something to upset you? She sighed. No, Mom, it's just... Things are complicated. Julia wants to host this year, and Michael agrees. We thought it would be easier if it was just them and the kids. Less stress for everyone. Less stress? I whispered. Grace, Thanksgiving is my favorite day. I look forward to it all year. I know, Mom, but maybe it's time for a change. We'll call you, okay? She hung up before I could say another word. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the phone, feeling like a guest in my own life. I thought about all the years I'd spent making Thanksgiving special, all the sacrifices, all the love, and now I was being told to stay home, alone. But as the tears threatened to fall, something inside me hardened. If my family didn't want me at their table, maybe it was time I set my own. I spent the rest of that day in a daze, wandering from room to room in my big, beautiful house. The kitchen, once the heart of every holiday, felt hollow. I opened the pantry and stared at the shelves lined with ingredients I'd already bought for the feast. Cranberries, sweet potatoes, spices for stuffing. I'd even ordered a fresh turkey, just like every year. I tried to distract myself by tidying up, but everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of Thanksgivings past. The faded handprint turkeys my grandchildren made in preschool still taped to the fridge. The gravy boat Charles bought at a yard sale, chipped but cherished. The old family photo on the mantle, me, Charles, Michael, Grace, and the grandkids, all smiling, arms around each other, the table groaning with food. I sat on the couch and let the memories wash over me. I remembered the year the power went out and we cooked the turkey on the grill. The year Grace's twins spilled cranberry sauce on the white tablecloth and we all laughed until we cried. The year Charles gave a toast so beautiful it made everyone tear up. I wondered when it had all started to slip away. Was it after Charles died? When the kids got older, busier, more independent? Or was it something I did? Some way I failed to keep us together? That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows. I felt a deep ache in my chest, a loneliness I hadn't known since the first Thanksgiving after Charles passed. I thought about calling Michael, about begging him to reconsider, but my pride wouldn't let me. I had always taught my children to stand tall, to have dignity, to never beg for love. But as the hours passed, my sadness turned to anger. How dare they shut me out? After everything I'd done, after all the years I'd put them first, how could they treat me like an afterthought? I realized I had a choice. I could spend Thanksgiving feeling sorry for myself, or I could do something about it. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. If my family didn't want me at their table, I would create a table of my own. I would not let their rejection define me. I would not let their absence steal my joy. I got out of bed, made a pot of strong coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. I started making a list, not of recipes, but of people. People I knew who might be alone this Thanksgiving. My neighbor, Mrs. Green, whose husband had passed away last spring. The young couple down the road, new in town and far from family. The retired teacher from church, Mr. Harris, who always brought cookies to the bake sale, but never had anyone to sit with at coffee hour. As I wrote down names, I felt a spark of excitement. Maybe this Thanksgiving could be different. Maybe it could be about more than just tradition. Maybe it could be about kindness, about community, about opening my heart to new possibilities. I picked up the phone and started making calls. The first call I made was to Mrs. Green. Her voice was thin and a little surprised when she answered, but it warmed as soon as she realized it was me. Evelyn, how nice to hear from you. Is everything all right? I hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. Actually, Mrs. Green, my family decided to do Thanksgiving without me this year. I was wondering if you had any plans. There was a pause, then a soft sigh. No, dear. I was just going to heat up some soup and watch old movies. It's not the same without Harold. I smiled, feeling a little less alone. How would you like to come over to my house instead? I'm putting together a Thanksgiving dinner for friends and neighbors who might be on their own this year. Oh, Evelyn, I'd love that. Thank you. I called the young couple down the road, Sarah and Miguel. They were surprised but delighted by the invitation. We were just going to order pizza and call our parents on Zoom, Sarah laughed. This sounds so much better. I called Mr. Harris, who at first tried to politely decline. I don't want to be a bother, Evelyn. Nonsense, I insisted. You'd be doing me a favor. I need someone to taste test my pumpkin pie. By noon, I had a guest list of 7, more than I'd expected, and enough to fill my table with laughter and stories. I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. I went to the market, bought extra potatoes and a second pie crust, and even picked up a bouquet of sunflowers for the table. As I prepared the house, I realized I was humming. I set the table with the good china, polished the silver, and ironed the tablecloth. I arranged the sunflowers in Charles's old gravy boat, placing it in the center of the table. For the first time since that awful text, I felt excited for Thanksgiving. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my family. I wondered if they would miss me, if they would notice the empty chair at their table. I wondered if they would regret their decision, or if they would simply move on, their lives a little lighter without me. But I also thought about my new guests, about the stories we would share, the memories we would make. I realized that family isn't just the people you're related to. It's the people who show up, who care, who make you feel seen. As I drifted off to sleep, I promised myself that this Thanksgiving would be different. It would be the start of something new, a tradition built on kindness, on resilience, on the simple joy of opening your door to others. And deep down, I knew that my family hadn't seen the last of me. I was just getting started. What I didn't know was that the surprise I was planning for Thanksgiving would reach my family in ways they never expected, and would change all of our lives forever. The days leading up to Thanksgiving passed in a flurry of activity. For the first time in years, I wasn't cooking for Michael, Grace, and the grandkids, but for a table of new faces, neighbors, friends, and even a few near strangers who, like me, had nowhere else to go. The house felt alive with purpose. I found myself waking up early, eager to plan the menu, polish the silverware, and make sure every detail was just right. Word of my Friendsgiving spread faster than I expected. On Monday, I got a call from Ruth, a woman from my book club. "Evelyn, I heard you're hosting Thanksgiving for anyone who needs a place. My sister just moved to town and doesn't know anyone yet. Would you mind if she joined?" "Of course not," I replied, delighted. The more, the merrier. By Tuesday, my guest list had grown to 10. I added extra chairs to the dining table and borrowed folding chairs from Mrs. Parker next door. I made a second batch of pie crust and doubled the stuffing recipe. The grocery store clerk raised an eyebrow as I loaded my cart with sweet potatoes, green beans, and 2 turkeys. "Big family?" she asked. I smiled. "Something like that." As I prepared, I thought about my own family. I wondered if Michael and Grace were busy with their own plans, if they were excited or nervous about hosting Thanksgiving without me. I wondered if they missed my cooking, my stories, the way I always made sure everyone had a seat at the table. I tried not to dwell on it, but the ache in my chest was hard to ignore. Still, I poured my energy into making this Thanksgiving special. I wrote each guest a handwritten invitation, tied with a ribbon and delivered to their door. I decorated the house with autumn leaves, candles, and the old paper turkeys the grandkids had made years ago. I wanted everyone who walked through my door to feel welcome, to feel at home. On Wednesday afternoon, as I was peeling potatoes, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door to find Sarah and Miguel standing on the porch, holding a homemade flan. "We wanted to bring something for dinner," Sarah said, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "And we were wondering if you needed any help setting up." I welcomed them in, grateful for the company. Together, we set the table, arranged the flowers, and shared stories about our families. Sarah told me about her childhood Thanksgivings in Texas, about the way her grandmother used to make tamales and how she missed those big, noisy gatherings. Miguel talked about his first Thanksgiving in America, about how strange and wonderful it felt to be welcomed into someone else's tradition. As the sun set, the house glowed with warmth and anticipation. I realized that for the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I was building. That evening, as I sat in the living room with Sarah and Miguel, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Mr. Harris, holding a tin of his famous oatmeal cookies and looking a little nervous. "I hope I'm not imposing, Evelyn," he said, shuffling his feet. "I haven't been out for Thanksgiving since my wife passed, but, well, your invitation meant a lot." I smiled and ushered him in. "You're not imposing at all, Mr. Harris. I'm so glad you're here. And those cookies are always welcome." We sat together, sharing coffee and stories. Mr. Harris told us about his years as a teacher, about the Thanksgiving plays his students used to put on, about the way his wife would always sneak extra marshmallows onto the sweet potatoes. His eyes sparkled with memory, and for a moment I saw the loneliness lift from his shoulders. As the night wore on, more guests called to confirm. Ruth's sister Emily was excited to join. Mrs. Green called to ask if she could bring her famous apple pie. Even Mrs. Parker, who usually spent Thanksgiving with her daughter out of town, said she'd be delighted to come this year. Her daughter had to cancel last minute, and she didn't want to spend the day alone. By the time I went to bed, my guest list had grown to 12. I lay awake, thinking about the laughter and conversation that would fill my house, about the new memories we would make. I felt a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years, but beneath the excitement, there was a flicker of sadness. I wondered if Michael or Grace would call, if they would realize what they were missing. I wondered if they would regret uninviting me, or if they were too busy with their own plans to notice my absence. I tried to push the thoughts aside. This Thanksgiving was about new beginnings, about opening my heart and my home to those who needed it most. I reminded myself that family isn't just about blood, it's about kindness, about showing up, about making space for others. As I drifted off to sleep, I promised myself that tomorrow I would focus on the people who were there, not the ones who weren't. Thanksgiving morning dawned bright and cold, sunlight glinting off the frost on the lawn. I woke up early, my heart fluttering with a mix of nerves and excitement. The house was quiet, but it felt full of possibility, full of hope. I put on my favorite apron, the one with faded sunflowers, and got to work. The kitchen quickly filled with the comforting smells of roasting turkey, cinnamon, and fresh bread. I hummed as I basted the bird, mashed potatoes, and rolled out pie dough. Every so often, I glanced at the clock, counting down the hours until my guests would arrive. Around 10, Mrs. Green arrived, carrying her apple pie and a bouquet of autumn flowers. "Evelyn, your house smells wonderful!" she exclaimed, her eyes shining. "Thank you for inviting me. I haven't looked forward to a holiday in years." Soon after, Sarah and Miguel came by to help with last-minute preparations. Ruth and her sister Emily arrived with a casserole, and Mr. Harris brought his cookies and a bottle of sparkling cider. Mrs. Parker showed up with homemade cranberry sauce and a warm hug. By noon, the house was buzzing with laughter, chatter, and the clatter of dishes. We set the table together, everyone pitching in. I watched as my guests, some of whom had never met before, shared stories, swapped recipes, and found common ground. The room glowed with warmth, not just from the oven, but from the kindness and connection that filled the air. As we sat down to eat, I looked around the table and felt a wave of gratitude. Here we were, a group of people brought together by circumstance, by loneliness, by the simple need to belong. Yet in that moment, we were a family. I raised my glass and offered a toast. To new friends, to old traditions, and to the courage to open our doors and our hearts. May this Thanksgiving remind us that we are never truly alone. Everyone smiled, and for a moment, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. But as we passed the turkey and shared stories, I couldn't help but wonder what my own family was doing. Did they miss me? Did they regret their decision? Or were they too busy to notice the empty chair at their table? I pushed the thought aside and focused on the laughter, the warmth, the joy of the moment. I had created something beautiful out of heartbreak, a new tradition, a new family, a new sense of belonging. What I didn't know was that the surprise I had planned for my family was about to unfold, and it would be a Thanksgiving none of us would ever forget. As the sun set and my guests said their goodbyes, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in weeks. It was time to deliver my surprise and show my family the true meaning of Thanksgiving. After the last guest left and the house grew quiet, I stood in the kitchen, hands still dusted with flour, heart pounding with a strange mix of satisfaction and anticipation. The day had been a triumph, laughter, stories, and gratitude echoing through rooms that had felt so empty just days before. But as I washed the last plate and set it in the rack to dry, my thoughts drifted back to Michael and Grace. I wondered if their Thanksgiving had been as joyful as mine. Had they missed my stuffing, my stories, the way I always made sure everyone felt welcome? Or had they simply moved on, content with their new, immediate family tradition? I dried my hands and walked to the living room where the phone sat on the side table. For a moment, I hesitated, staring at the numbers. I hadn't spoken to Michael since the text that uninvited me. I hadn't heard Grace's voice since our brief, awkward call. But tonight, something inside me urged me to reach out, not to beg for a seat at their table, but to share what I had learned, what I had built, and maybe, just maybe, to remind them of what family truly means. I picked up the phone and dialed Michael's number. It rang 3 times before he answered, his voice cautious. "Hello? Hi, Michael. It's Mom." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Hi, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving." "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart." I tried to keep my voice steady, light. "I just wanted to call and see how your day went." He hesitated. "It was fine. Julia made turkey. The kids watched the parade. Grace and her family came over. It was quiet." I could hear something in his voice, a hint of regret maybe, or just the fatigue of a day that hadn't gone as planned. I smiled even though he couldn't see me. "That sounds nice. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves." He cleared his throat. "Yeah, how was your day, Mom?" I took a deep breath. "It was wonderful, Michael. I hosted Thanksgiving here for some neighbors and friends who didn't have anywhere else to go. We had a full table, 12 people, can you believe it? There was so much laughter, so many stories. It reminded me of the old days, when our house was always full." There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice softer. "I didn't know you were doing that." "I didn't plan it at first," I admitted. "But when I realized I wouldn't be with you and Grace, I decided I could either feel sorry for myself or make something beautiful out of the day." "And I did, Michael. I really did." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad, Mom. I really am." I could hear Julia's voice in the background, the kids laughing in another room. I wondered if Grace was still there, if she would want to talk to me. But I didn't push. Instead, I said, "I just wanted you to know that I love you, and that my door is always open, for you, for Grace, for the kids, For anyone who needs a place to belong. Michael's voice was thick with emotion. Thanks, Mom. I'm sorry about how things turned out. Maybe next year we can do things differently. I smiled, tears prickling at my eyes. Maybe we can, Michael. Maybe we can. After I hung up with Michael, I sat in the quiet living room, the glow of the lamp casting soft shadows on the walls. My heart felt lighter, but there was still a heaviness I couldn't shake. I thought about Grace, my daughter, my firstborn, the one who used to help me in the kitchen, sneaking bites of pie filling when she thought I wasn't looking. I missed her laugh, her hugs, the way she used to call me every Sunday just to chat. I picked up the phone again, my hands trembling just a little, and dialed Grace's number. It rang, and for a moment I thought she wouldn't answer. But then, just as I was about to hang up, her voice came through, tired and wary. Hello? Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. There was a pause, and I could hear the clatter of dishes in the background, the muffled sound of children's voices. Hi, Mom. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath. I just wanted to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Grace, I hope you and the kids had a nice day. She hesitated, and I could almost picture her standing in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, trying to find the right words. It was different. Julia did most of the cooking. The kids missed your mashed potatoes. I smiled, a bittersweet ache in my chest. I missed making them. But I had a house full of guests today. Neighbors, friends, even a few people I'd never met before. We laughed, we shared stories, and for the first time in a long time, I felt needed. Grace was quiet for a long moment. I'm glad you weren't alone, Mom. I was worried you'd be upset. I was at first, I admitted. But then I realized I could either let this break me, or I could open my heart to something new. And Grace, it was beautiful. I wish you could have seen it. I heard her sniffle just a little. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to hurt you. Things have been so complicated lately. Julia wanted to host, and Michael agreed, and I didn't want to cause any drama. I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me. I understand, Grace, but family isn't about convenience. It's about showing up for each other, even when it's hard. I hope you remember that. She was quiet, and I wondered if I'd said too much. But then she whispered, I do, Mom. I really do. We talked for a few more minutes about the kids, about work, about the weather. It was awkward at first, but slowly the old warmth crept back in. Before we hung up, I said, my door is always open, Grace. For you, for the kids, for anyone who needs a place to belong. She promised to visit soon, and I believed her. Maybe things wouldn't go back to the way they were, but maybe, just maybe, we could build something new. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet, the house still smelling of turkey and pie, and I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had survived the day I'd been dreading. I had found joy, even in the midst of heartbreak, and I had reminded my children gently, but firmly, that I was still here, still their mother, still the heart of our family. But as I stood to tidy up, I noticed something on the front porch. A small white envelope slipped under the door. My heart skipped a beat as I bent to pick it up, my name written in a familiar looping script. I opened it, hands trembling, and read the words inside. My breath caught in my throat. I unfolded the letter, my hands trembling as I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Julia's. My heart pounded in my chest. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd spent so many Thanksgivings surrounded by family, and began to read. Evelyn, I know this is unexpected, but I wanted to reach out. I'm sorry for how things happened this year. I know it hurt you, and I take responsibility for my part in that. I thought hosting Thanksgiving would be easier, less stressful, but I see now that I was wrong. The house felt empty without you. The kids kept asking when Grandma was coming, and even Michael seemed lost without your stories and your laughter. I hope you can forgive me. I hope we can talk soon. Julia. I sat there, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. For so long, I'd felt like an outsider in my own family, but here was Julia, my daughter-in-law, who'd always kept me at arm's length, reaching out, admitting she was wrong. It was more than I'd expected, more than I'd dared to hope for. I pressed the letter to my chest and let myself cry, not out of sadness, but out of relief. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of healing. Maybe my family was starting to realize what I'd always known, that love isn't about perfection or convenience or even tradition. It's about forgiveness. It's about opening your heart even when it's been broken. I wiped my tears and looked around my cozy, candlelit kitchen. The leftovers were packed away, the dishes done, the house quiet. But I didn't feel alone. I felt strong. I felt seen. I took out a piece of stationery and began to write a reply to Julia, my heart full of hope and a little bit of pride. I told her I forgave her, that I missed them all and that my door would always be open. I told her about the laughter and warmth that had filled my home that day, and how I hoped one day we could share that together again. As I sealed the envelope, I realized that the surprise I'd served my family wasn't just a new tradition or a table full of strangers turned friends. It was a reminder that I was still here, still loving, still willing to forgive. And that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is a second chance. But as I set the letter by the door, ready to deliver it in the morning, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Grace. "Mom, can we come over tomorrow? The kids want to see you." I think we all do. I smiled through my tears, my heart swelling with gratitude. Maybe this Thanksgiving wasn't what I'd planned, but it was exactly what I needed. As Evelyn prepares for an unexpected family visit, she wonders, will this be a true reconciliation or just another test of her strength? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind raced with memories and questions. Would Grace really come? Would the kids be with her? Would Michael and Julia show up too? Or would it just be another awkward, half-hearted visit? I tried to quiet my thoughts, but hope and worry tangled together in my chest. At dawn, I got up and put on a fresh pot of coffee. The house was still, the early light painting golden stripes across the kitchen floor. I set out the leftover pie, sliced some bread, and reheated the turkey, just in case. I even put out the good plates, because if my family was coming, I wanted them to feel welcome, no matter what had happened. Around 9, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. My heart leapt. I peeked through the curtains and saw Grace's minivan, the kids tumbling out in their pajamas, hair wild, faces bright with excitement. Grace followed, looking tired but determined, a nervous smile on her lips. I opened the door before they could knock. "Good morning," I called, my voice trembling with emotion. "Grandma!" Emily and Josh shouted, racing up the steps and throwing their arms around me. I hugged them tight, breathing in the sweet, familiar scent of their hair, feeling the ache in my heart begin to ease. Grace stood back, watching us, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. I reached out and pulled her into a hug. For a moment, we just stood there, holding each other, letting the silence say what words couldn't. "I'm sorry, Mom," Grace whispered. "I should have stood up for you. I should have said something to Michael and Julia. I didn't want to cause a fight." I stroked her hair, the way I used to when she was little. "It's all right, sweetheart. We all make mistakes. What matters is that you're here now." We went inside, the kids already clamoring for pie and hot chocolate. I poured coffee for Grace and sat with her at the kitchen table, the morning sun warming our faces. For a while, we just talked about the kids, about work, about the little things that make up a life. It felt easy, natural, like slipping into an old, comfortable sweater. But beneath the surface, I could feel the tension, the questions we hadn't asked, the apologies we hadn't spoken. Finally, Grace looked at me, her eyes serious. "Mom, do you think Michael and Julia will come?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Julia left me a letter last night. She apologized. I think she wants to make things right." Grace nodded, biting her lip. "I hope so. The kids missed you yesterday. I missed you." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I missed you too, honey, but we're together now. That's what matters." Just then the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I stood, smoothing my hair, and went to answer it. On the porch stood Michael, holding a bouquet of flowers, Julia beside him, her eyes red-rimmed but hopeful. The kids peeked out from behind their legs, shy but smiling. "Hi, Mom," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "Can we come in?" I opened the door wide, my heart full. "Of course, you're home." Michael stepped inside first, his arms full of flowers and a nervous energy I hadn't seen in him since he was a boy. Julia followed, her hands twisting together, her eyes darting around the kitchen as if she was searching for a sign that she was truly welcome. The kids, little Anna and Ben, clung to her legs at first, but when they saw Emily and Josh already, at the table they broke into grins and ran to join their cousins. For a moment, the house was filled with the sound of children's laughter, the clatter of little feet, and the sweet, chaotic energy that only family can bring. I felt my heart swell with gratitude and a touch of sadness for all the years I'd taken these moments for granted. Michael set the flowers on the counter and turned to me, his face serious. "Mom, I owe you an apology. We all do. Yesterday just didn't feel right. The food was fine, but it wasn't Thanksgiving. Not without you." Julia stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how much you mean to this family. I hope you can forgive me." I looked at them both, my heart aching with love and relief. "Of course I forgive you. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them and do better." Julia's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to hug me. I held her tight, feeling the walls between us finally begin to crumble. Michael joined in, and for a moment we stood there in a tangle of arms, the past melting away. Grace came over, her own eyes shining, and soon the whole family was gathered in the kitchen, the air thick with emotion and the promise of a new beginning. We sat down together, the kids already digging into the leftover pie and turkey. I poured coffee for the adults, and we talked, really talked, for the first time in years. We shared stories, laughed about old memories, and even cried a little for the time we'd lost. At one point, Michael looked around the table and said, "Mom, I think we forgot what Thanksgiving is really about. It's not just about food or tradition, it's about being together. You taught us that." I smiled, my heart full. "It's never too late to remember." Julia nodded, wiping her eyes. "Next year we want you to host again. Or if you'd rather, we can all do it together. But we don't ever want you to feel left out again." I looked at each of them, my children, my grandchildren, my daughter-in-law, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. "Thank you," I said softly. "That means more to me than you'll ever know." The morning passed in a blur of laughter, hugs, and second helpings. The kids played in the living room, building forts out of couch cushions and giggling until they collapsed in a heap. The adults lingered at the table, savoring the warmth of forgiveness and the joy of being together. But as the sun climbed higher, in the sky, I realized there was still one more thing I needed to say. One more truth I needed to share, not just for my family, but for myself. As the laughter faded into a comfortable hush, I stood and cleared my throat. The children looked up from their games, and the adults turned their attention to me. I felt the weight of the moment, the importance of speaking my truth, not out of anger, but out of love for myself and for them. "I want to say something," I began, my voice steady but gentle. "Yesterday, when I got that message, I felt like my heart had been broken. I've spent so many years making sure everyone else was happy, making sure the traditions continued, even after your father passed. I did it because I love you all, and because family means everything to me." I looked at each of them, seeing the guilt and regret in their eyes, but also the hope. But I realized something important this year. I realized that I matter too. My feelings, my presence, my love, they're not just background noise. They're the heart of this family, and I won't let myself be pushed aside again. Grace reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with tears. "You're right, Mom. We took you for granted. I'm so sorry." Michael nodded, his voice thick. "We all are. We'll do better. We promise." Julia wiped her eyes and managed a small, grateful smile. "Thank you for giving us another chance, Evelyn. I hope we can earn back your trust." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them and move forward. Together. The kids, sensing the seriousness of the moment, came over and wrapped their arms around me. I hugged them tight, feeling the warmth of their little bodies, the promise of new memories yet to come. We spent the rest of the day together, playing games, sharing stories, and planning for the holidays ahead. The house was filled with laughter and love. The kind that only comes from forgiveness and second chances. As the sun set and my family prepared to leave, Grace hugged me one last time. "We love you, Mom. We'll never forget this." I watched them drive away, my heart full. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew that I was stronger than I'd ever realized. I had found my voice and I wasn't afraid to use it, but as I closed the door and turned off the lights, I noticed a message blinking on my phone, a voicemail from someone I hadn't heard from in years. I pressed play, my curiosity piqued, and listened as a familiar voice spoke. "Evelyn, it's Marjorie. I heard about your Thanksgiving and I have an idea for Christmas. Call me back." I smiled, a new sense of excitement bubbling up inside me. Maybe this was just the beginning of a whole new chapter. What does Marjorie have planned for Christmas? And how will Evelyn's newfound strength shape the next family gathering? The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the window, and dialed Marjorie's number. My heart fluttered with curiosity and a little bit of hope. Marjorie and I had been friends since childhood, but life had pulled us in different directions. Still, she was the one person who always seemed to know when I needed a friend the most. She answered on the first ring, her voice bright and familiar. "Evelyn, I was hoping you'd call. I heard about your Thanksgiving. Word travels fast in this town, you know." "I'm so proud of you," I smiled, feeling a warmth that only an old friend can bring. "Thank you, Marjorie. It was hard, but it turned out better than I could have imagined." "Well, I have an idea for Christmas," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "What if we do something together? Not just for us, but for the whole community. There are so many people who spend the holidays alone. What if we hosted a Christmas dinner at the church hall? Open doors, open hearts. No one left out." The idea took my breath away. I thought of the faces around my Thanksgiving table. Neighbors, friends, even strangers who'd become family for a day. I thought of the loneliness I'd felt, and how it had melted away in the warmth of shared stories and laughter. "I love it, Marjorie," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "Let's do it. Let's make sure no one spends Christmas alone." We spent the next hour planning, our conversation a flurry of ideas and laughter. We'd decorate the hall with garlands and twinkling lights, set up long tables with red and green tablecloths, and invite everyone, widows, widowers, young couples far from home, anyone who needed a place to belong. We'd cook together, just like old times, and ask others to bring their favorite dishes. We'd make it a true community celebration. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet, a sense of purpose filling me. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading the holidays. I was looking forward to them. I was building something new, not just for myself, but for everyone who needed a little extra love. The next morning, I called Grace and Michael to tell them about the Christmas dinner. Grace was the first to answer, her voice bright and eager. "Mom, that sounds wonderful. The kids would love to help decorate. And I can make my famous sugar cookies," Michael called back later, his voice full of pride. "Mom, I'm so glad you're doing this. Julia and I want to help too. Maybe we can bring a ham or help set up tables." Even Julia texted me, offering to organize a toy drive for the children who would be attending. I felt my heart swell with gratitude. The wounds of Thanksgiving were healing, replaced by a new sense of unity and hope. But as the days passed and the guest list grew, I started to feel the old doubts creeping in. What if it was too much? What if people didn't show up? What if I failed? One evening, as I sat surrounded by lists and recipes, the phone rang. It was Mrs. Green, her voice gentle and reassuring. "Evelyn, I heard about your Christmas dinner." I just wanted to say thank you. Last Thanksgiving was the first time I'd felt truly seen since Harold passed. "You gave me hope. Whatever you need, I'm here to help." Her words soothed my worries. I realized I wasn't alone, not anymore. I had a community behind me, a family that extended far beyond blood. But as Christmas drew closer, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. The return address made my heart skip a beat. It was from Charles's sister, Margaret, who I hadn't spoken to in years. I opened it with trembling hands, unsure what memories or old wounds it might bring. I sat at the table, the envelope from Margaret heavy in my hands. Charles's sister and I had drifted apart after his passing. Old misunderstandings, words left unsaid, and the slow, silent distance that grief can bring. I hesitated, afraid of what I might find inside. But I knew I had to open it. Her handwriting was as neat as ever, the blue ink looping across the page. "Dear Evelyn, I heard from a friend in town about your Thanksgiving. I know we haven't spoken in a long time, but I wanted to reach out. Holidays have been hard for me too since Charles passed. I miss him every day. I miss you too. I'm sorry for the way things ended between us. I let my grief turn into anger, and I pushed you away when I should have held you closer. If you can forgive me, I'd love to see you. I'd love to come for Christmas if you'll have me. Love, Margaret. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears slipping down my cheeks. For so long, I'd carried the weight of that broken relationship, blaming myself for not trying harder, for not reaching out. Now here was Margaret offering an olive branch, asking for forgiveness and a place at my table. I called her that afternoon, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice tentative but hopeful. Evelyn? Margaret, it's me. I got your letter. There was a pause, then a shaky breath. I wasn't sure you'd want to talk to me. I smiled through my tears. Of course I do. I've missed you, Margaret. I've missed our talks, our laughter. I've missed family, she let out a soft sob. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I should have come to you after Charles died. I just didn't know how. I know, I said gently. Grief does strange things to us. But it's never too late to start again. I'd love for you to come for Christmas. I'd love for us to be family again. We talked for nearly an hour, sharing memories of Charles, catching up on lost years, and making plans for Christmas. When I hung up, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. A piece of my heart I hadn't realized was missing had finally come home. The next few days were a blur of preparations. The church hall committee gave us their blessing, and soon volunteers were signing up to help decorate, cook, and serve. Grace and Julia organized a toy drive, and Michael offered to pick up Margaret from the airport. Even the children got involved, making paper snowflakes and stringing popcorn garlands. One evening, as I stood in the hall watching the community come together, I felt Charles's presence beside me. I could almost hear his voice warm and proud. You did it, Evelyn. You brought them all home. But as Christmas Eve approached, a winter storm warning flashed across the news. Roads were closing, flights were being canceled, and I worried that Margaret, and maybe even some of our guests, wouldn't make it. I tried to stay calm, but the old fears crept in. What if, after all this work, the hall was empty? What if I was left alone again, this time with even more hearts to disappoint? That night, as the wind howled outside, I sat by the window, watching the snow fall, and prayed for a Christmas miracle. Christmas Eve dawned gray and cold, the world outside blanketed in thick, silent snow. I woke before sunrise, my heart pounding with worry. I checked my phone. No new messages from Margaret, no updates from Michael about her flight. The news said the roads were icy, the airport was a mess, and the storm would last all day. I tried to keep busy, bustling around the kitchen, double-checking the lists, and making sure every dish was ready to go. Grace and Julia arrived early, arms full of cookies and toys for the drive, their cheeks pink from the cold. The children tumbled in behind them, their laughter filling the house with warmth. Mom, it's beautiful out there, Grace said, shaking snow from her boots. The church called. They're still planning to open the hall. They said people are already showing up to help decorate. I smiled, relief washing over me. That's wonderful, honey. I just hope everyone can get there safely. Julia squeezed my hand. We'll make it work, Evelyn. Even if it's just us, it'll be special. But I couldn't shake the worry about Margaret. I checked my phone again and again, hoping for a message, a call, anything. The hours ticked by, the snow kept falling, and my hope began to fade. Just after noon, as we were loading the car with food and gifts, my phone finally rang. It was Michael. Mom, you won't believe this, he said, his voice breathless with excitement. Margaret's flight was canceled, but she wouldn't give up. She rented a car and drove all night. She's here. She's at the church. Tears sprang to my eyes. Oh, thank God. Is she all right? She's fine. Tired but happy. She said she couldn't miss Christmas with you. I pressed a hand to my heart, overwhelmed with gratitude. We'll be there soon. When we arrived at the church hall, the sight took my breath away. The room was aglow with twinkling lights and garlands, the tables set with red and green cloths, the air filled with the scent of cinnamon and pine. Neighbors, friends, and strangers bustled about, hanging ornaments, arranging food, and laughing together. And there, standing by the window, was Margaret. She looked older, a little frail, but her eyes sparkled with the same warmth I remembered. When she saw me, she hurried over and we embraced, both of us crying and laughing at the same time. I'm so glad you're here, I whispered. Me too, Evelyn. I wouldn't have missed this for the world. The rest of the day was a blur of joy. People kept arriving, braving the snow and ice to be together. The hall was filled with music, laughter, and the clatter of dishes. Children played, adults swapped stories, and everyone, no matter where they came from, felt like they belonged. As we sat down to eat, I looked around at the faces, my children, my grandchildren, Margaret, Marjorie, Mrs. Green, and so many others. I realized that this was what I'd been searching for all along. Not just a family, but a community. Not just tradition, but love in action. I stood and raised my glass. To everyone who made it here today, and to those we hold in our hearts. May we always remember that the true meaning of the holidays is opening our doors, our tables, and our hearts. Thank you for reminding me that I am never alone. Everyone cheered, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. But as the evening wound down and the snow continued to fall, I noticed Julia standing by the door, her face troubled. She beckoned me over, her voice low. "Evelyn, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago." My heart skipped a beat. I braced myself, not knowing what to expect. The church hall was still humming with the afterglow of Christmas joy. Children's laughter echoing off the walls, the scent of pine and cinnamon lingering in the air, and the soft murmur of neighbors lingering over coffee and pie. But as Julia pulled me aside, her hand trembling in mine, I felt the world narrow to just the two of us. We stepped into a quiet corner near the coat racks, away from the bustle. Julia's eyes darted nervously, her voice barely above a whisper. "Evelyn, I need to tell you something. I should have told you a long time ago, but I was afraid. I didn't want to make things worse between us." I squeezed her hand, trying to steady her. "Whatever it is, Julia, you can tell me. We've come this far together." She took a shaky breath, her eyes filling with tears. "When Michael and I first got married, I felt like I could never live up to your standards. You were so good at everything, hosting, cooking, making everyone feel at home. I felt invisible, like I was always in your shadow." I listened, my heart aching. I remembered the awkward silences, the way Julia always seemed to hang back at family gatherings, the tension I'd never quite understood. "I started resenting you," she continued, her voice cracking. "I thought if I could just do things my way, maybe Michael and the kids would see me as the heart of the family. That's why I pushed for us to host Thanksgiving this year. I wanted to prove I could do it. But when it all fell apart, I realized how wrong I'd been. I hurt you, and I hurt the family. I'm so sorry, Evelyn." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and I reached out, pulling her into a hug. "Oh, Julia, I never wanted you to feel that way. I'm so sorry if I made you feel less than. You're part of this family, and you always have been. I see you. I appreciate you." She sobbed into my shoulder, the years of misunderstanding and silent competition melting away. "Thank you, Evelyn. I want to do better. I want us to be a real family, not just for the holidays, but always." I held her tight, feeling a deep sense of relief and forgiveness. "We will, Julia, we will. But you have to promise me something." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Anything. Promise me you'll never be afraid to tell me how you feel. We're family. We can't heal what we hide." She nodded, a small hopeful smile breaking through. "I promise." We stood there for a moment, the weight of old wounds lifting, replaced by something new. Trust. And the possibility of a real friendship. But as we returned to the hall, Michael approached, his face pale. "Mom, Julia, can I talk to you both for a minute? There's something I need to say too." Julia and I exchanged a glance, bracing ourselves for whatever was coming next. Michael led us to a quiet spot by the window, away from the laughter and music. He looked nervous, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his eyes darting between Julia and me. For a moment, he just stood there, searching for the right words. "Mom, Julia," he began, his voice low and shaky. "I need to apologize too. I let things get this far because I was afraid of conflict. I thought if I just went along with what everyone wanted, things would work themselves out. But all I did was make it worse." He looked at Julia, his eyes softening. "I should have listened to you, Julia. I should have talked to Mom instead of letting you two drift apart. I was so focused on keeping the peace that I didn't realize I was letting my family fall apart." Julia reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "We all made mistakes, Michael. But we're here now. That's what matters." He turned to me, his eyes shining with regret. Mom, I'm sorry for shutting you out, for not standing up for you, for not realizing how much you mean to all of us. I took you for granted, and I'm sorry. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I smiled through them. Oh, Michael, I know you were trying to do your best. We all were. But families aren't about avoiding conflict. They're about working through it together. He nodded, relief flooding his face. I want to do better, Mom. I want us to be close again. I want my kids to know the kind of family I grew up with. I reached out and pulled both Michael and Julia into a hug. We're going to be all right. We're going to build something even stronger than before. As we stood there, holding each other, I felt the last of the old pain slip away. For the first time in years, I truly believed that we could heal, that we could move forward not as perfect people, but as a real family, flaws and all. Just then, the children ran over, their cheeks flushed from playing, their eyes bright with excitement. Grandma, come see the snowman we built outside, Emily called, tugging at my hand. I laughed, letting the warmth of the moment fill me. I'll be right there, sweetheart. Michael smiled, his arm around Julia. Let's go, Mom. Let's make some new memories. We bundled up and stepped outside into the winter night. The snow was still falling, soft and silent, blanketing the world in white. The children's snowman stood proudly in the churchyard, adorned with a crooked carrot nose and a scarf someone had donated to the clothing drive. We laughed and played, tossing snowballs and making angels in the snow. For a little while, all the worries and regrets melted away, replaced by the simple joy of being together. As we headed back inside, I caught Julia's eye. She smiled, and I knew that whatever secrets or fears we'd carried, we'd left them behind in the snow. But as the night drew to a close and the guests began to leave, Margaret approached me, her face serious. Evelyn, can we talk? There's something I need to tell you about Charles. Something I should have told you a long time ago. My heart skipped a beat. After all these years, what could Margaret possibly have to say about my late husband? Margaret and I found a quiet bench in the church hallway, away from the laughter and the clatter of dishes being packed away. She sat down slowly, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes shining with a mix of nerves and tenderness. Evelyn, she began, her voice trembling, I've carried this for so long, and I can't keep it to myself anymore. You deserve to know. I reached over and took her hand, bracing myself for whatever truth she was about to share. She took a deep breath. After Charles passed, I found some letters he'd written but never sent. They were to you, to the kids, even to me. He wrote about how proud he was of you, how much he loved the family you built. But there was one letter, Evelyn, that he wrote just for you. I was selfish. I kept it, thinking I'd give it to you when the time was right. But then I got angry, and I let my grief get in the way. I'm so sorry. She reached into her purse and pulled out a faded envelope, the edges worn soft with time. My name was written on the front in Charles's familiar, steady hand. My breath caught in my throat. I should have given this to you years ago, Margaret whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. Please forgive me. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Charles's handwriting filling the page. My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side. I want you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. You made every holiday brighter, every day warmer. I know you'll keep the family together, even when it's hard. And if you ever feel alone, remember that you are the heart of our home. I love you always. Yours, Charles. I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing quietly. All the years of missing him, of doubting myself, of wondering if I'd done enough, they melted away in the warmth of his words. Margaret hugged me, her own tears mingling with mine. He loved you so much, Evelyn. I'm sorry I kept this from you. I hope you can forgive me. I nodded, unable to speak, but my heart was full of forgiveness. Thank you, Margaret. This means more to me than you'll ever know. We sat together in silence, the weight of old secrets finally lifted. I felt Charles's love wrap around me, steady and sure, reminding me that I was never truly alone. As the night ended and the last guest left, I tucked Charles's letter safely into my purse. I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them, and a family, both old and new, to share them with. But as I turned out the lights in the church hall, my phone buzzed with a message from Marjorie. Evelyn, I have one more idea. Let's make this a tradition, not just for us, but for the whole town. Are you ready? I smiled, hope blooming in my heart. Maybe this was just the beginning of something even bigger. The days after Christmas passed in a gentle blur. The snow lingered, blanketing the town in a hush that made every morning feel like a fresh start. I kept Charles's letter on my nightstand, reading it each night before bed, letting his words settle my heart and remind me of the love that had built my family. But Marjorie's message kept tugging at my mind. Let's make this a tradition, not just for us, but for the whole town. Are you ready? I could almost hear her voice, full of that unstoppable energy that had gotten us into so many adventures over the years. I called her the next morning, the phone barely ringing before she picked up. Evelyn, I was hoping you'd call. I've already started a list of ideas. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Of course you have. What are you thinking? Marjorie's excitement was contagious. We start with a New Year's brunch, open to everyone. Then every holiday we do something. Valentine's for the widows and widowers, Easter egg hunts for the kids, summer picnics, fall harvest dinners. We make sure no one in this town ever feels alone again. The idea was big, bigger than anything I'd ever tried. But as she spoke, I realized how much I wanted it. Not just for myself, but for everyone who'd ever sat at home, waiting for a call that never came, or a knock that never sounded. I'm in, I said, my voice steady. Let's do it, Marjorie. Let's make sure everyone has a place to belong. We got to work right away. We called the church, the community center, the local bakery. We put up flyers at the grocery store and posted on the town's Facebook page. The response was overwhelming. People called to volunteer, to donate food, to offer rides to those who couldn't drive. Even the mayor called, offering to help set up tables. Grace and Julia jumped in, organizing crafts for the kids and a sign-up sheet for potluck dishes. Michael and the other men offered to shovel snow and set up chairs. The children made invitations, hand-drawn and full of color, delivering them door to door with giggles and mittened hands. The morning of the New Year's brunch, I woke before dawn, nerves fluttering in my stomach. I worried, what if no one came? What if it was too much too soon? But as the sun rose, painting the snow in gold and pink, I felt a quiet confidence settle over me. I wasn't alone. I had a whole community behind me. By 9 o'clock, the community center was buzzing. The tables were covered in white cloths, vases of winter greenery at the center. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air. People arrived in twos and threes, some shy, some laughing, all of them carrying something, food, flowers, or just the hope of a new beginning. I stood at the door, greeting each guest with a hug or a handshake, my heart swelling with pride and gratitude. Marjorie bustled around, making sure everyone had a seat, her laughter ringing out above the chatter. As the room filled, I caught sight of Mrs. Green, her eyes bright as she chatted with a young mother I'd never met. Mr. Harris was teaching the children how to fold napkins into swans. Even Margaret, still a little tired from her journey, was smiling as she poured coffee for a group of newcomers. I realized, in that moment, that we'd done it. We'd built something new, a tradition not just for our family, but for everyone who needed one. But as I looked around the room, I saw a familiar face standing hesitantly in the doorway, someone I hadn't seen in years, someone whose presence brought a rush of old memories and a twinge of unresolved pain. I blinked, hardly believing my eyes. Standing in the doorway, clutching his hat in his hands, was Tom Bennett, my old neighbor from 2 streets over. Tom and I had once been close back when Charles was alive. He'd helped Charles build the fence in our backyard, and we'd shared many a summer evening on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. But after Charles passed, Tom had drifted away, and I'd always wondered if it was just the way grief made people scatter, or if I'd done something to push him off. He looked older, a little stooped, but his eyes were kind as ever. He caught my gaze and offered a tentative smile. Evelyn, I hope it's all right I came. I saw the flyer at the post office. Didn't want to intrude. I hurried over, my heart pounding with a mix of nerves and joy. Tom, you could never intrude. I'm so glad you're here. Come in, let me get you some coffee. He stepped inside, his shoulders relaxing as the warmth of the room and the sound of laughter wrapped around him. It's been a long time, he said quietly, accepting the mug I handed him. It has, I agreed, leading him to a seat near the window. Too long. I've missed seeing you around. He looked down, swirling the coffee in his cup. After Charles passed, I didn't know what to say. I figured you had family, and I didn't want to be a bother. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You were never a bother, Tom. Grief makes us all a little lost, doesn't it? But you're here now. That's what matters, he smiled, his eyes misty. Thank you, Evelyn. This is nice. I didn't realize how much I missed being part of something. As the brunch went on, Tom relaxed, joining in the conversation, laughing with old friends, and even helping the children with their crafts. I watched him, feeling a sense of healing, not just for him, but for myself too. It was as if a missing piece of my old life had quietly slipped back into place. Marjorie caught my eye from across the room, her face beaming with pride. She mouthed, "Look at what you've done," and I felt a rush of gratitude for her friendship and her vision. After everyone had eaten their fill and the children were playing in the corner, I stood and tapped my glass for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. I just want to say thank you, I began, my voice trembling with emotion. Thank you for showing up, for bringing your food and your laughter, for making this new tradition possible. When I was uninvited from Thanksgiving, I thought my days of family gatherings were over. But you all showed me that family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose, who you welcome, who you love. There were tears in more than a few eyes, and I saw Grace and Julia holding hands, Michael with his arm around Margaret, and even Tom dabbing at his eyes with a napkin. We're going to keep doing this, I promised. Every holiday, every season, we'll open our doors and our hearts. No one in this town will ever have to feel alone again. The room erupted in applause, and I felt a wave of joy and belonging wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. But as the applause faded and people began to gather their things, Marjorie pulled me aside, her face serious. Evelyn, there's something else I need to talk to you about. It's about the future of these gatherings and your role in them. I looked at her, surprised. My role? She nodded, her eyes shining with excitement and a hint of mischief. I think it's time you took the lead, Evelyn. Not just for these events, but for the whole community. I want you to run for president of the community council. My breath caught. Me? I'd never thought of myself as a leader, just a mother, a friend, a neighbor. But as I looked around at the faces in the room, I realized maybe Marjorie was right. Maybe I was ready for something more. I stared at Marjorie, my mind spinning. Me, president of the community council? I laughed, shaking my head. Marjorie, I'm just Evelyn. I bake pies and host dinners. I'm not a politician, she grinned, squeezing my arm. That's exactly why you should do it. People trust you, Evelyn. They listen to you. You brought this whole town together when everyone else was content to stay apart. You have a gift, and it's time you shared it with everyone. I looked around the room at the faces of friends and neighbors. Some I'd known for decades, others I'd only just met. I saw hope in their eyes and something else too, belief. Belief in me. Grace came over, having overheard the last part of our conversation. Mom, you'd be perfect. You care about everyone. You know what it's like to feel left out, and you'd never let that happen to anyone else. Michael nodded, joining us. You've always been the heart of our family. Now you can be the heart of this whole community. Even Tom, who'd been quietly listening from his seat, spoke up. Evelyn, you've already changed my life just by inviting me here today. Imagine what you could do for the rest of us. I felt tears prick my eyes, overwhelmed by their faith in me. For so long, I'd defined myself by what I did for others, by the meals I cooked, the holidays I hosted, the traditions I kept alive. But maybe, just maybe, I was meant for more. I took a deep breath, feeling Charles's letter in my purse, his words echoing in my heart. You are the heart of our home. Maybe it was time to be the heart of something even bigger. I looked at Marjorie, then at my children, my friends, my neighbors. All right, I said, my voice trembling but strong. I'll do it. I'll run for president of the community council, but only if you all promise to help me. The room erupted in cheers and applause, and I felt a surge of excitement and purpose I hadn't felt in years. Marjorie hugged me tight, whispering, I knew you could do it. As the brunch wound down and people began to leave, many stopped to thank me, to offer their support, to share their own hopes for the future. I realized that this was more than just a new tradition. It was a new beginning, not just for me, but for everyone in our little town. But as I locked up the community center and stepped out into the crisp winter air, I saw a familiar car parked at the curb. Grace was waiting for me, her face serious. Mom, can we talk? she asked quietly. "There's something I need to tell you, something I've been holding on to for a long time." My heart skipped a beat. After all we'd been through, what could Grace possibly have left to say? The street was quiet, the last of the brunch guests waving as they drove away, their cars trailing plumes of exhaust in the cold air. I pulled my coat tighter around me and walked over to Grace's car, my heart thumping with worry and curiosity. She sat in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the dashboard as if she was gathering the courage to speak. I opened the passenger door and slid in beside her. For a moment, we just sat there in silence. The only sound the ticking of the cooling engine and the distant laughter of children playing in the snow. Finally, Grace turned to me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Mom, I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time, but I was afraid. I didn't want to disappoint you." I reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Grace, you could never disappoint me. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She took a shaky breath, her voice trembling. "After Dad died, I felt so lost. I tried to be strong for you, for Michael, for the kids. But inside, I was falling apart. I started resenting the holidays, the traditions, even you sometimes, because you always seemed so strong, so put together. I felt like I was failing, like I could never live up to what you expected of me." I listened, my heart aching for my daughter, remembering all the times I'd seen her smile through her pain, all the times I'd assumed she was fine because she never said otherwise. I started pulling away. Grace continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made excuses, skipped visits, let Julia take over more and more. I thought if I distanced myself, it would hurt less. But it didn't. It just made me lonelier." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and I reached over to wipe them away. "Oh, sweetheart. I had no idea you felt that way. I wish you told me." She nodded, her shoulders shaking. "I know, I was ashamed. I thought I was supposed to be the strong one, the one who held everything together. But I was just tired, Mom. So tired." I pulled her into a hug, holding her as she cried. "You don't have to be strong all the time, Grace. None of us do. I'm so sorry if I made you feel like you had to be perfect. I just wanted us to be together, to keep Dad's memory alive." She sniffled, pulling back to look at me. "I want that too, Mom. I want to be close again. I want the kids to know the kind of family we had when I was little. But I need your help. I can't do it alone." I smiled through my own tears, brushing her hair back from her face. "You're not alone, Grace. You never were. We'll do this together, one step at a time." She nodded, a small, hopeful smile breaking through. "Thank you, Mom, for listening. For forgiving me." I squeezed her hand. "Always, sweetheart. Always." We sat there for a while longer, the silence between us now warm and full of understanding. I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're not as strong as everyone thinks. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply to listen. But as we stepped out of the car and walked back toward the house, Grace stopped and turned to me, her face serious once more. "There's one more thing, Mom. Something about Dad. Something I found after he passed, but I never told anyone." My breath caught. "What is it, Grace?" She hesitated, glancing down at her hands. "I found a letter. One he wrote to you but never gave you. I've kept it all these years. I think it's time you read it." Grace reached into her purse and pulled out a small, yellowed envelope. The edges were worn, and my name was written on the front in Charles's unmistakable handwriting. My hands trembled as she placed it in my palm. "I found it in Dad's desk drawer, tucked behind some old photos," Grace said softly. "I read it once, right after he died. I was so angry and sad I didn't know what to do with it. I thought maybe it would hurt you more than help you. But now, after everything, I think you deserve to have it." I stared at the envelope, my heart pounding. I'd already received one letter from Charles thanks to Margaret, but the idea that he'd written another, one Grace had kept hidden all these years, made my emotions swirl. I looked at my daughter, her eyes full of apology and hope. "Thank you for trusting me with this, Grace," I whispered, my voice thick. She nodded, tears glistening on her cheeks. "I'm sorry I kept it from you. I didn't want to lose you too." I hugged her tight, feeling the years of distance and misunderstanding melt away. "You never lost me, Grace. Not for a second." We walked inside together, the envelope clutched in my hand. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd spent so many nights missing Charles, wishing for one more conversation, one more sign that he was still with me. Grace sat across from me, her hands folded, waiting. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Charles's handwriting was a little shaky, but every word was full of love. My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say everything I wanted to. I know I wasn't always the best at talking about my feelings, but I want you to know how much you mean to me. You are the light of my life, the reason our family is strong. I know you'll keep everyone together, even when it's hard. If you ever feel alone, remember that you are never truly by yourself. My love is with you always. Take care of Grace and Michael. Remind them that it's okay to be sad, to miss me, but not to let grief steal the joy from their lives. You are the heart of our home, Evelyn. I love you now and forever. Yours, Charles. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Grace reached across the table and took my hand, her own eyes shining. I wish I'd given it to you sooner, she whispered. Maybe it would have helped. I shook my head, smiling through my tears. You gave it to me when I needed it most. Thank you, Grace. We sat together in silence, the weight of the past finally lifting. I felt Charles's love wrap around us, steady and sure, and I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. But as I tucked the letter away with the other precious things I'd gathered over the years, my phone buzzed with a message from Marjorie. Evelyn, the mayor wants to meet with you about the community council. He says the whole town is talking about your new tradition. Are you ready for the next step? I looked at Grace, a new sense of purpose blooming in my heart. I think it's time, I said softly. Time to take everything I've learned and share it with the world. Grace smiled, pride shining in her eyes. Dad would be so proud of you, Mom. We all are. The next morning, I woke with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Charles's letter, now tucked safely in my nightstand, felt like a blessing, a final gift from the man who had always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. Grace and I shared breakfast together, the conversation easy and full of laughter, as if a heavy curtain had finally lifted between us. Later that day, I called Marjorie back. Her voice was bubbling with excitement. Evelyn! The mayor wants to meet you at the town hall this afternoon. He says he's never seen the community so alive. You've started something, my friend. I felt a flutter of nerves, but also a quiet confidence. I'll be there, Marjorie. Thank you for believing in me. Grace insisted on coming along. As we walked up the steps of the old brick building, I squeezed her hand. Whatever happens, I'm glad you're here with me. Inside, the mayor greeted us with a broad smile. Evelyn, you've done more for this town in a few months than most people do in a lifetime. The council is unanimous. They want you to lead the new Community Togetherness Initiative. We want to make your holiday gatherings a permanent part of our town's tradition. And we want you at the helm. I was stunned. For a moment, I could only stare at him, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. But then I thought of Charles's words, of Grace's confession, of all the people who had found a place at my table. I realized this was my chance, not just to heal my own heart, but to help others find belonging too. I nodded, my voice steady. I'd be honored, Mr. Mayor, but only if I have the support of my family and friends. This isn't just my work, it's all of ours. Grace squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. We're with you, Mom, every step of the way. The mayor beamed. Welcome aboard, Evelyn. I can't wait to see what you do next. As we left the town hall, the winter sun breaking through the clouds, I felt a sense of hope and purpose I hadn't known in years. Grace hugged me tight. You're not just the heart of our family, Mom. You're the heart of this whole town. I smiled, tears of joy slipping down my cheeks. I think I finally believed that, sweetheart. But as we walked back to the car, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Julia. Evelyn, I have an idea for the next event. Can we talk tonight? I want to help make it even bigger. I laughed, feeling the circle of love and support growing wider with every day. Maybe, just maybe, this was the legacy Charles always knew I could build. The days that followed were a whirlwind. My phone rang off the hook, neighbors volunteering to help, local businesses offering donations, even the high school students wanting to pitch in. The mayor's announcement about the Community Togetherness Initiative had made the front page of the town paper, and suddenly everywhere I went, people stopped me to say thank you. I'd never thought of myself as a leader. I was just Evelyn, the woman who made too much pie and always set an extra place at the table. But now, as I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of notes and a calendar full of events, I realized I was something more. I was the heart of this town. Julia came over that evening, her arms full of ideas and a sparkle in her eye I hadn't seen in years. Evelyn, I was thinking, what if we did a winter festival? Not just a dinner, but games for the kids, music, maybe even a snowman contest. We could invite everyone, make it a real celebration. I grinned, feeling her excitement. That sounds wonderful, Julia. Let's do it. And let's make sure everyone has a way to get here, even the folks who can't drive in the snow. She nodded, already jotting down notes. I'll talk to the church about using their van, and I'll get the PTA involved for the games. Grace joined us at the table, bringing hot cocoa and her own list of ideas. I want to organize a memory wall. People can bring photos or write down their favorite holiday memories. We'll hang them up for everyone to see. Michael called in on speakerphone, offering to help with setup and to recruit some of his friends from work. Even Marjorie, never one to be left out, promised to bake her famous cinnamon rolls and lead the sing-along. As we planned late into the night, I looked around at my family, my children, my daughter-in-law, my friends, and felt a deep, quiet joy. The wounds of the past had healed, replaced by something stronger, a sense of purpose, of belonging, of hope. The next morning, I met with the mayor and the community council at the town hall. The room was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. The mayor introduced me as the new chair of the initiative, and I stood at the front of the room, my hands only shaking a little. I want to thank you all for trusting me, I began, my voice steady. This isn't just about dinners or festivals. It's about making sure no one in our town ever feels left out or forgotten. It's about building a community where everyone has a place. There was a round of applause, and I saw faces shining with pride and hope. I knew, in that moment, that I was exactly where I was meant to be. But as the meeting ended and people filed out, the mayor pulled me aside, his expression serious. Evelyn, there's something you should know. Not everyone is happy about these changes. Some folks think we're moving too fast, that we're spending too much. There's going to be a vote at the next council meeting. You might have to fight for this. I felt a flicker of fear, but I stood tall. Thank you for telling me, Mr. Mayor. I won't back down. Not now, he smiled, clapping me on the shoulder. That's what I hoped you'd say. As I walked home through the snowy streets, I thought about all the people who were counting on me. I thought about Charles's letter, about the family I'd fought so hard to keep together, about the new friends who'd found a place at my table. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew I wasn't alone. That night, as I sat by the window watching the snow fall, I made a promise to myself. I would fight for this community, for my family, for everyone who needed a place to belong. But as I drifted off to sleep, my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart race. Evelyn, I heard there's trouble at the council. If you need support, you know where to find me. Tom, I smiled, hope and determination blooming in my chest. Whatever came next, I was ready. The days leading up to the council meeting were a blur of activity and nerves. I spent my mornings at the community center, working with Julia and Grace to finalize plans for the winter festival. The afternoons were filled with phone calls, neighbors offering encouragement, a few voicing their doubts, and some, like Mrs. Parker, who just wanted to make sure there would be enough hot chocolate for the kids. But in the evenings, when the house was quiet and the snow fell softly outside, the worries crept in. What if the council voted against the initiative? What if all this hope I'd helped build came crashing down? I thought of Charles's letter, his faith in me, and tried to let it steady my heart. The night before the meeting, Tom stopped by. He brought a thermos of his famous mulled cider and a quiet, steady presence that calmed my nerves. I heard some of the old guard are stirring up trouble, he said, settling into the armchair by the fire. They don't like change. Never have, I nodded, pouring us each a mug. I know. But this isn't just about change for the sake of it. It's about making sure no one is left out. I wish they could see that. Tom smiled, his eyes kind. They will, Evelyn. You've already changed more hearts than you know. And you won't be alone tomorrow. I'll be there, and so will half the town if I have anything to say about it. I laughed, feeling some of the tension slip away. Thank you, Tom. I don't know what I'd do without you. He reached over and squeezed my hand. You'd do just fine. But it's nice to have someone in your corner, isn't it? We sat in companionable silence, the fire crackling, the scent of cinnamon and cloves filling the room. For the first time in days, I felt ready. The next morning, I dressed in my best blue sweater, the one Charles always said brought out my eyes, and walked to the town hall with my head held high. The streets were lined with neighbors, many waving or calling out encouragement. I saw Mrs. Green bundled in her red scarf and Mr. Harris, who gave me a thumbs up from across the street. Inside, the council chamber was packed. I spotted Julia and Grace near the front, their faces full of pride. Michael stood in the back, arms crossed, a look of fierce support on his face. Even Marjorie was there, her notebook in hand, ready to take down every word. The meeting began with the usual business, but soon enough, the topic turned to the Community Togetherness Initiative. One of the council members, Mr. Dorsey, stood up, his voice sharp. "I think we're moving too fast," he said. "We're spending money we don't have, and not everyone wants these changes. I propose we table the initiative until we can review the budget and get more input from the community." A murmur ran through the room. I felt my heart pound, but I stood up, my voice clear and steady. "Mr. Dorsey, with all due respect, this isn't just about money. It's about people. It's about making sure no one in our town spends the holidays alone or feels like they don't belong. We've already seen what happens when we open our doors and our hearts. We've built something beautiful, and I believe it's worth fighting for." There was a moment of silence, then Tom stood up. "I second what Evelyn said. I've lived here my whole life, and I've never seen the town come together like this. We can find the money. What we can't afford is to go back to the way things were." One by one, others stood up. Mrs. Green, Mr. Harris, even some of the high school students. They spoke about what the new traditions had meant to them, about the friendships they'd made, the loneliness they'd left behind. I looked around the room, my heart swelling with pride. This was more than just a vote. It was a turning point. But as the council prepared to vote, Mr. Dorsey leaned over and whispered something to another member. I saw a few heads nodding and a cold knot of fear twisted in my stomach. Was it enough? Had I done enough? The mayor called for the vote, and the room held its breath. The mayor's gavel echoed through the chamber. All in favor of continuing the Community Togetherness Initiative, say aye. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then from the front row, Mrs. Green's voice rang out strong and clear, "Aye!" Mr. Harris followed. Then Marjorie, then Tom, and then a chorus of voices. Young and old, families and neighbors, rose up in support. The sound filled the room, swelling with hope and unity. The mayor smiled, his eyes shining. All opposed? A few scattered nays drifted from the back, but they were drowned out by the wave of support. The mayor nodded, his voice warm. "The ayes have it. The initiative continues," a cheer erupted. I felt tears prick my eyes as Julia hugged me from one side and Grace from the other. Michael made his way through the crowd, wrapping me in a bear hug. "You did it, Mom. You really did it." I looked around at the faces, some familiar, some new, all shining with pride and relief. For the first time, I truly felt the power of community, the strength that comes from standing together. Mr. Dorsey approached, his expression softer than before. "Evelyn, I may not agree with everything, but I can't deny what I've seen. You've brought this town together. I hope you'll let me help in my own way." I smiled, extending my hand. "Of course, Mr. Dorsey. There's room at the table for everyone." As the meeting ended, people lingered, sharing ideas for the winter festival, offering rides to neighbors, and signing up to volunteer. The energy was electric, the sense of possibility almost overwhelming. That evening, as I walked home through the snowy streets, Tom caught up with me. "You were incredible in there, Evelyn. Charles would be so proud." I squeezed his arm, my heart full. "Thank you, Tom. I couldn't have done it without you and everyone else." He smiled, his breath clouding in the cold air. "So what's next, Madam President?" I laughed, the sound ringing out into the night. "Next, we get ready for the winter festival. And after that, who knows? Maybe we'll change the world, one holiday at a time." When I got home, I found a note from Grace on the kitchen table. "Mom, thank you for fighting for all of us. I'm proud to be your daughter. Let's make this the best winter festival ever. Love, Grace." I sat down, the note in my hands, and let myself cry. Tears of joy, of relief, of gratitude. I thought of Charles, of the family I'd nearly lost, of the community I'd found. I realized that sometimes the greatest surprises come not from what we plan, but from what we dare to hope for. But as I wiped my tears and started planning the festival, my phone buzzed with a message from Marjorie. "Evelyn, Channel 7 News wants to do a story on you in the town. Are you ready for the world to hear your story? I smiled, feeling a new adventure just beginning. The days leading up to the winter festival were a blur of excitement, nerves, and more casseroles than I'd ever seen in my life. The whole town seemed to be buzzing with anticipation. Every time I walked down Main Street, someone would stop me, offering a pie, a pair of mittens for the donation table, or just a word of encouragement. Even the children seemed to sense that something special was happening, their laughter echoing through the frosty air as they practiced for the snowman contest and the holiday sing-along. And then, just when I thought my heart couldn't hold any more joy, Marjorie called with news that made me sit right down at the kitchen table. Evelyn, Channel 7 is sending a reporter to cover the festival. They want to interview you about the Togetherness Initiative. They say your story could inspire other towns to do the same. I nearly dropped the phone. Me? On television? Oh, Marjorie, I don't know if I'm ready for all that. She just laughed, her voice full of pride. You're more than ready, Evelyn. You've been ready your whole life. Just be yourself. That's all anyone needs. The morning of the festival dawned bright and cold, the sky a perfect winter blue. I arrived at the community center early, my arms full of cinnamon rolls and my heart pounding with excitement. The parking lot was already filling up. Neighbors, friends, and even a few strangers who'd heard about the event on the radio. Inside, the hall was transformed. Twinkling lights hung from the rafters, tables were piled high with food, and a giant banner stretched across the stage. Welcome to the Winter Festival, where everyone belongs. Julia and Grace were already there, bustling around with last-minute details. Michael was outside, helping Tom and a group of teenagers build a snow fort for the kids. Even Margaret had flown in, her cheeks rosy as she handed out hot cocoa at the entrance. As the first guests arrived, I felt a wave of nerves. What if something went wrong? What if the reporter asked questions I couldn't answer? But then I saw Mrs. Green, her eyes shining as she hugged a new friend, and I remembered why we were here. This wasn't about me. It was about all of us, about the power of opening your door and your heart. The festival was a whirlwind of laughter, music, and community. Children raced from the snowman contest to the crafts table, their faces flushed with joy. Neighbors who'd barely spoken before sat together, sharing stories and recipes. The memory wall Grace had created filled up with photos and notes, reminders of loved ones, of holidays past, of hope for the future. When the reporter from Channel 7 arrived, I was nervous, but Marjorie squeezed my hand and whispered, "Just speak from the heart." So I did. I told her about the Thanksgiving I'd spent alone, about the pain of being uninvited, and about the decision to open my home to others. I spoke of the new traditions we'd built, the family we'd found in each other, and the lesson I'd learned that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the hardest moments. The reporter smiled, her eyes misty. Evelyn, what would you say to someone watching this who feels left out or alone? I looked into the camera, thinking of all the people who might be listening. I'd say, don't wait for someone else to invite you in. Open your own door. Reach out. You never know whose life you might change, including your own. As the interview ended, the crowd erupted in applause. I felt a wave of gratitude so strong it nearly knocked me off my feet. But as the sun set and the festival wound down, I found myself standing outside, watching the snow fall softly over the town. Grace joined me, slipping her arm through mine. You did it, Mom, she whispered. You changed everything, I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. No, sweetheart, we did it. All of us, but as we stood there, the lights of the festival twinkling behind us, I realized there was one more thing I needed to do, one more surprise I wanted to give my family and my town. The festival lingered in the air long after the last song was sung and the final snowman had toppled over. People lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth and laughter behind. I watched as neighbors exchanged phone numbers, children promised to play together again, and even Mr. Dorsey, who'd once opposed the whole idea, helped stack chairs with a smile. As the hall emptied, I gathered my family and closest friends for one last moment together. The memory wall, now overflowing with photos and handwritten notes, caught my eye. I walked over and gently placed Charles's letter, just a copy, not the precious original, among the memories. I wanted everyone to see his words, to feel the love and hope that had carried me through the hardest days. Julia noticed and squeezed my shoulder. That's beautiful, Evelyn. He'd be so proud. I smiled, feeling his presence in the room, in the laughter, in the way the community had come together. He always believed in second chances, in making room for everyone. Grace gathered the children, their cheeks pink from the cold, and Michael brought Margaret over, her eyes shining with tears. "I never thought I'd see the day," Margaret whispered, "when this family and this town felt so whole again." I hugged her tight. "It took all of us, Margaret. Every single one." Marjorie, never one to let a moment pass without a little mischief, clinked her mug and called for everyone's attention. "Before we go, I think Evelyn has one last surprise for us." I laughed, shaking my head. "You just can't help yourself, can you, Marjorie?" She grinned. "Not when it comes to you, my friend." I took a deep breath, looking at the faces around me. My family, my friends, my neighbors, and even a few strangers who had become part of our story. "I want to make this official," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "From now on, every year we'll have this festival. And every holiday, we'll open our doors to anyone who needs a place to belong. No one in this town will ever spend a holiday alone again, not if I have anything to say about it." A cheer went up, and I felt the warmth of their love wrap around me like a blanket. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to be at the heart of something bigger than myself. As the crowd began to disperse, Tom approached, his hands in his pockets, a shy smile on his face. "Evelyn, I was wondering, would you like to join me for dinner next week? Just the two of us. No committees, no casseroles, just us." I felt my cheeks flush, surprised and delighted. "I'd like that, Tom. I'd like that very much." He grinned, and for a moment I felt young again, full of hope, full of possibility. As the last lights were turned off and the doors locked behind us, I looked back at the hall, at the memory wall, at the footprints in the snow. I knew that this was just the beginning, not just for me, but for everyone who had found a place at our table. But as we walked home, Grace slipped her arm through mine and whispered, "Mom, what do you think Dad would say if he could see all this?" I looked up at the stars, feeling his love all around me. I think he'd say, "Well done, Evelyn. Well done." That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the snow fall softly over the town. The glow from the streetlights made everything look magical, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for a new story to begin. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The heartbreak of being uninvited from my own family's Thanksgiving. The loneliness that had threatened to swallow me whole, and the courage it took to open my door to others. I remembered the faces around my table, the laughter, the tears, the forgiveness. I remembered Charles's letters, his faith in me, and the way his love had carried me through every storm. Most of all, I thought about the lesson I'd learned. That family isn't just the people you're born to. It's the people who show up, who listen, who forgive, and who make room for you at their table. It's the community you build, one act of kindness at a time. As I finished my tea, I realized I wasn't just the heart of my family anymore. I was the heart of a whole town. And I was ready for whatever came next. The next morning, I woke to find messages from people all over the state. Some who'd seen the news story, others who'd heard about our festival from friends. They wanted to know how we did it, how they could start something similar in their own towns. I spent the day answering emails, sharing recipes, and offering advice. It felt good to know that our little story might help others find their own sense of belonging. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a deep, peaceful blue, my family gathered in the living room. The children played by the fire, Grace and Julia chatted over coffee, and Michael and Tom discussed plans for the next event. I looked around at the people I loved, at the family I'd fought for, the friends I'd found, and the community we'd built together. I stood up feeling a surge of gratitude. "I just want to say thank you," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me, for forgiving me, for letting me be part of your lives. I don't know what the future holds, but I know we'll face it together. And I know that no matter what, there will always be a place for you at my table." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Grace smiled and said, "To new traditions, Mom, and to never letting anyone feel alone again." We raised our cups in a toast, laughter and love filling the room. If you're listening to my story tonight, I want you to remember this: no matter how alone you feel, no matter how many times you've been left out or let down, You have the power to open your own door. You have the power to create family, to build community, to turn heartbreak into hope. All it takes is one act of courage, one invitation, one open heart. So if you're ever uninvited, overlooked, or forgotten, don't let it break you. Let it be the start of something new. You never know whose life you might change, including your own. Have you ever felt left out or alone during the holidays? What did you do to find your way back to joy? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Thank you for being part of my family, right here, right now. Until next time, remember, there's always a place for you at my table.